Before the world learned his name, before he became the architect who challenged his own pride on camera, Ethan Greene was known for one thing: believing he was always right. The documentary opens with a close-up of his skeptical face as he stares at a cluster of Filipino bamboo houses swaying gently in the coastal breeze. "These," he scoffed. "This can't be real architecture." Little did he know, he was about to witness a reality that would rip apart everything he thought he understood about design, resilience, and the heart of a people he had yet to truly meet. And once he saw the truth, the world saw him change. Ethan had flown to the Philippines on a corporate assignment, a charity-adjacent project meant to showcase modern solutions for disaster-prone communities. His firm believed that showcasing steel-frame prototypes in Southeast Asia would attract international donors. To Ethan, bamboo houses seemed primitive, outdated, and ineffective against typhoons. "Nature-proofing requires technology," he declared confidently to the documentary crew. But to the locals welcoming him with warm smiles, the arrogance in his voice wasn't offensive, it was amusing. They had heard this before. Many foreigners arrived certain they understood the tropics better than the people who lived there for generations. The crew followed Ethan as he toured San Isidro, a fishing village sitting between the mountains and the open sea. To him, it was a place defined by vulnerability, fragile homes, narrow pathways, and children running barefoot. But to the residents, it was a living memory, a heritage encoded in the shape of their woven walls. When Ethan tapped a bamboo post with his knuckles and laughed at the hollow echo, several locals exchanged knowing glances. They didn't correct him, they simply waited. They had a feeling that nature itself would handle the explanation he refused to hear. His first introduction to the village's building traditions came from a woman named Aling Rosita, a master weaver in her 60s. She placed a hand on his arm and said, "Before you judge our homes, Anik, let them speak first." Ethan smiled politely, but didn't take her words seriously. In his mind, architecture was measured in blueprints, tensile strength tests, and international standards, not in stories, intuition, or indigenous knowledge. Yet as Rosita demonstrated how each strip of bamboo was woven with precision and purpose, Ethan found himself watching more closely than he intended. The texture, the pattern, the rhythm, there was something intellectually familiar but emotionally foreign. Still, when he presented his firm's modern prototype house to the villagers, he fully expected applause. The crew captured his confident stride, the way he clicked through slides showing carbon steel beams and roof reinforcement plates. But when he finished, the reaction wasn't what he expected. Silence. Then murmurs. Then, finally, an elder raised his hand and said calmly, "Sir, that house will fight the wind. Ours dance with it." Ethan stiffened. He didn't understand. In his worldview, progress meant resisting nature, overpowering it, controlling it. But for the villagers, survival came from harmony, not conquest. The first major turning point came unexpectedly. A sudden storm rolled in, not a full typhoon, but strong enough to make the waves crash violently against the shore. Ethan instinctively rushed toward the modern prototype, worried the metal roofing might detach. He watched anxiously as the gusts slammed against the rigid structure. Meanwhile, he noticed villagers gathering under a cluster of bamboo houses, calm, almost casual. The crew followed him as he ran to observe. To his shock, the bamboo houses swayed gently like trees in the wind, absorbing the movement instead of resisting it. They looked almost alive. Inside one of the bamboo homes, a large family sat comfortably, chatting and sipping hot salabat. The walls breathed with the wind, creaking softly but never cracking. Ethan widened his eyes as he realized something startling. The flexible joints and organic materials were acting as shock absorbers. Meanwhile, the prototype house he designed shuddered violently as the storm hammered it. A loud metallic groan echoed across the village. Ethan's face fell. His design wasn't failing. Not yet, but it was undeniably struggling, while the bamboo houses seemed to understand the rhythm of the storm in a way his blueprint never could. When the storm passed, Ethan walked outside in silence. The prototype had sustained visible dents, and some of its roof panels had loosened. Not catastrophic, but embarrassing. In contrast, the bamboo houses remained intact. Kids ran out of them laughing, splashing in puddles, while mothers hung laundry to dry. Ethan approached Rosita with an expression the documentary crew captured beautifully, a blend of humility and dawning respect. She simply smiled. Our ancestors built with what the land gave them. They studied the wind long before engineers arrived. For the first time, Ethan didn't argue. Determined to reconcile his pride with what he witnessed, Ethan asked if he could shadow local builders, not as a superior observer, but as a student. The shift in his tone surprised the locals, but they welcomed him warmly. He followed a group of craftsmen to the bamboo groves at dawn, where the morning fog wrapped the stalks in silver light. "We harvest only what's mature," one craftsman explained. "Too young and it's weak. Too old and it's brittle." Ethan scribbled notes furiously, realizing these people approached bamboo the way surgeons approached bone, with precision, intuition, and deep respect. Back in the village, he watched as harvested bamboo was meticulously treated, soaked, smoked, and sun-dried to resist pests and decay. He had assumed bamboo was temporary, disposable. Yet here, it was engineered to last. The builders used techniques that echoed sophisticated engineering principles, but the knowledge came not from textbooks, but from centuries of observation. "Architecture is a conversation with nature," a builder told him. "If you shout at it, it will shout back. But if you listen, it will guide your hands." Ethan paused, realizing how aggressively his own designs tended to shout. As days passed, he found himself captivated not only by the architecture, but by the culture interwoven with it. Children practiced folk dances under stilt houses designed for ventilation. Women wove wall panels, while sharing stories of past typhoons and triumphs. Men repaired fishing nets at night, lantern light shining through the gaps in the bamboo walls. There was a rhythm to the village, one he had never encountered in his sleek, steel-and-glass world. And slowly, imperceptibly, something softened inside him. He no longer viewed the village as vulnerable. He saw it as alive, adaptive, wise. The real revelation came when the villagers invited him to witness the construction of a new bamboo home from foundation to finish. Ethan filmed the process himself, mesmerized. The structure grew like a living organism, posts anchored deep into the earth, beams tied with wrought tan instead of nails, walls woven like textiles. The absence of heavy machinery wasn't a limitation, it was intentional. Every connection was flexible, every angle calculated by hand and instinct. "It's like building a giant basket," Ethan whispered to the camera. "A basket that protects people from storms." He sounded almost reverent. The more he learned, the more glaring the flaws in his earlier assumptions became. He had mocked the homes for lacking air conditioning, yet standing inside one during midday heat felt surprisingly cool due to natural ventilation. He had dismissed them as low cost and therefore low quality, yet the craftsmanship exceeded that of many modern prefabricated units. He had laughed at the idea of bamboo lasting decades, until he was shown century-old structures still standing in rural Luzon. Each discovery chipped away at his arrogance. Each moment humbled him a little more. But the documentary shifts dramatically when Ethan visits a village that had survived one of the strongest typhoons to ever hit the region. He expected to find devastation, but instead found bamboo homes still standing beside ruins of concrete structures. Local leaders explained that the bamboo houses had not been untouched, but their flexible frames allowed them to bend instead of break. Footage shows Ethan running his fingers along a wall that had clearly weathered the storm but remained intact. "Everything I believed about structural hierarchy is wrong," he said quietly. "Nature doesn't reward rigidity. It rewards adaptability." Inspired, Ethan contacted his firm back in the U.S. to share his findings. But the reaction was cold. His supervisor dismissed bamboo housing as romanticized rural aesthetics. Another colleague joked, "So you've gone native now?" Their laughter stung more than Ethan expected. He had left the U.S. believing he held superior knowledge, but here he was being transformed by a community he once underestimated. The tension between his professional identity and his newfound respect for Indigenous architecture became a defining theme in the documentary. Instead of returning home, Ethan extended his stay. He knew he couldn't present theories to his firm without evidence, so he began designing a hybrid structure, a bamboo-inspired, disaster-resilient home that merged modern engineering with Indigenous techniques. He sketched for hours under a stilt house while children peeked over his shoulder. With locals guiding him, he tested joinery, experimented with treated bamboo composites, and consulted elders about wind patterns. For the first time in his life, Ethan wasn't leading a project, he was co-creating one. The process wasn't easy. Ethan struggled with the delicate rattan bindings, often tying them too tight or too loose. Villagers laughed warmly when his knots slipped apart. Instead of feeling embarrassed, Ethan laughed with them. He realized this was what learning looked like: messy, humbling, communal. Rosita often stood beside him, correcting his form. "Your hands are too stiff," she teased. "You build like someone afraid to trust the material." Her comments struck him deeply. In truth, he had spent years trusting only steel and concrete. Now he was learning to trust something as seemingly fragile as bamboo. When Ethan completed the first prototype of his hybrid bamboo house, the villagers gathered around with pride. The structure stood gracefully, part traditional hut, part modern shelter. It had reinforced joints, better insulation, and sustainable treatment methods. But its soul remained distinctly Filipino. As Ethan walked through it, he realized it was the first design in years that genuinely excited him. "This isn't my project," he told the camera. "It's ours." It was a moment that revealed how far he had come from the man who once belittled the village's craftsmanship. However, the story's climax arrived in the form of a real test, another typhoon warning. Stronger than the previous one, it threatened to strike the region within 48 hours. Panic rippled through the village, but preparations were swift and organized. Ethan joined the efforts, helping secure fishing boats and strengthen houses. For the first time, he wasn't merely observing. He was part of the community's defense. The hybrid house he built was about to face nature's judgment far sooner than he expected. As the typhoon hit, the documentary captures chaotic yet powerful footage: thundering winds, flying debris, and roaring waves. Ethan sheltered inside one of the traditional bamboo homes with several families. The house bent dramatically with each gust, but never cracked. The rattan joints stretched and tightened, just like the craftsman had explained. When the storm intensified further, a loud metallic crash echoed from the direction of his firm's prototype. Ethan clenched his jaw. "Please hold," he whispered, but he wasn't talking about the modern house. He was talking about the bamboo one he had helped build. The storm raged for hours. Mothers sang to calm children. Men prayed softly. Ethan sat silently between them, trembling not from fear but from realization. Here he was, relying not on the technology he once worshipped, but on the indigenous wisdom he had mocked. When the storm finally passed and dawn painted the village in gold and gray, Ethan stepped outside with the others. The modern prototype lay partially collapsed, panels torn off, but the bamboo houses, including the hybrid one, still stood. Ethan fell to his knees in disbelief. The crew captured the tears in his eyes, not of fear but awe. Everything he had learned, everything he had seen, culminated in this moment. The resilience of the bamboo homes wasn't theoretical. It was living proof. Villagers hugged him, clapping him on the back. "You built with your heart this time," Rosita told him gently. Ethan nodded, overwhelmed. For the first time, he fully understood. Technology without respect for nature was incomplete. Modern knowledge without cultural humility was hollow. With the aftermath documented, Ethan returned to the hybrid house and inspected it closely. Some panels were warped, some joints were strained, but the structure had held. He traced the rattan bindings with his fingertips, marveling at their effectiveness. "This," he said to the camera, "is architecture. Not the materials, not the aesthetics, but the relationship between people, their environment, and their history." His voice cracked slightly, not from exhaustion, but from conviction. He no longer wanted to convince his firm. He wanted to transform architecture itself. Returning to the U.S. was a jarring experience. The towering skyscrapers, polished concrete, and controlled climates felt colder than he remembered. When he presented his findings to his firm, the boardroom was silent. Some executives were skeptical. Others outright dismissed the idea of incorporating bamboo into future designs. But Ethan didn't falter. He spoke with clarity, passion, and humility. He showed footage from the storms, interviews with villagers, and side-by-side comparisons of the structural performance. Slowly, resistance softened. They couldn't argue with evidence. Ethan then proposed a new initiative, a partnership between Filipino craftsmen and international engineers to develop sustainable, hybrid bamboo architecture. His firm hesitated until media interest surged following early releases of his documentary clips. Headlines praised the rediscovery of indigenous resilience. Environmental organizations applauded. Suddenly, the firm realized the potential, not just ethically, but economically. They approved the initiative. Ethan felt a weight lift from his shoulders. For once, the direction he wanted aligned with something bigger than corporate design trends. Over the next months, he worked tirelessly with Filipino artisans, hosting workshops, conducting material testing, and designing models for climate-adaptive housing. He returned to San Isidro multiple times, each visit deepening his bond with the community. Children ran to greet him, shouting, "Kuya Ethan!" Builders teased him affectionately. Even Rosita, with her sharp humor, called him her American apprentice. He no longer felt like an outsider. He felt like someone who had come home to a truth he never knew he needed. One of the documentary's most emotional sequences shows Ethan presenting a new bamboo-inspired shelter design to international disaster response organizations. The design integrated indigenous weaving patterns, airflow optimization, and modular assembly. Representatives from multiple countries expressed interest. "It's not just a house," Ethan explained. "It's a philosophy." The crowd applauded, but the most powerful reaction came from the Filipino delegates who watched their traditions finally receive global recognition. Their eyes sparkled with pride and gratitude. Ethan's transformation became a symbol for something deeper, the importance of respecting local knowledge. Across the world, many cultures faced similar disrespect. Ancient techniques dismissed as outdated, rural craftsmanship labeled backward, indigenous structures undervalued. Ethan's story challenged those stereotypes. It showed that innovation wasn't always about creating something new. Sometimes, it was about recognizing the wisdom that had been there all along. His journey resonated with millions who watched the documentary, inspiring architects, students, and ordinary viewers alike. But the greatest moment came when Ethan delivered a public speech at a global architecture summit. Standing at a podium, he recounted the villagers' courage, skill, and humility. He spoke of bamboo not as a material, but as a metaphor for resilience. "The world is facing stronger storms, literal and metaphorical," he said. "Our survival depends not on how rigid we are, but how flexible. Not how loud we shout, but how well we listen." His words received a standing ovation. But Ethan later admitted that the applause wasn't what mattered. It was honoring the people who taught him. As the documentary nears its conclusion, Ethan returns once more to San Isidro. The hybrid houses now dot the landscape, blending seamlessly with traditional ones. The community has grown stronger, more prepared. Ethan walks through the village, greeting friends, checking on structures, and sharing laughter. When he reaches Rosita's home, she hands him a woven bamboo panel. "For your next design," she says, "so you don't forget where your education truly began." Ethan holds it close, visibly moved. As the documentary nears its conclusion, Ethan returns once more to San Isidro. The hybrid houses now dot the landscape, blending seamlessly with traditional ones. The community has grown stronger, more prepared. Ethan walks through the village, greeting friends, checking on structures, and sharing laughter. When he reaches Rosita's home, she hands him a woven bamboo panel. "For your next design," she says, "so you don't forget where your education truly began." Ethan holds it close, visibly moved. The final segments show progress across multiple Filipino communities, where Ethan and local builders collaborate on improving climate-resilient designs. International grants pour in. Universities request research partnerships. Filipino craftsmen travel abroad to teach weaving and joinery techniques. The documentary emphasizes that this was never about Western validation. It was about global recognition of indigenous brilliance. Ethan becomes an advocate, but he never positions himself as the hero. The real heroes are the craftsmen, the elders, and the villagers whose knowledge shaped the movement. In one particularly touching scene, Ethan interviews a family whose bamboo home survived multiple storms thanks to the hybrid improvements. The mother explains how her children sleep peacefully even during heavy rains. The father proudly points to beams reinforced using techniques Ethan learned from the village. "You respected our way," he tells Ethan. That's why we trusted yours. Those words hit Ethan harder than any award or certification ever could. Respect, that was the foundation missing from his earlier designs. The documentary ends with Ethan teaching a workshop to young Filipino students interested in sustainable architecture. He stands beside local artisans, demonstrating bamboo weaving techniques with newfound confidence and humility. When you design, he tells the students, remember that the land is your first teacher and your community is your lifelong classroom. The students smile, inspired not by a foreign expert, but by someone who learned to honor the wisdom of their ancestors. Ethan's journey becomes a testament to the power of listening, truly listening. As the closing narration begins, panoramic shots sweep over bamboo houses standing proudly against the landscape. Waves crash, wind blows, yet the homes remain steady, moving in harmony with nature. Ethan's final words echo gently, I came to the Philippines thinking I understood architecture. But it was here, in these humble bamboo homes, that I learned what it really means to build. I mocked what I didn't understand, and that ignorance became my greatest lesson. The screen fades to black, leaving viewers with a profound truth. Sometimes the most modern solution is rooted in the oldest wisdom. Thanks for watching.